be looking at the 2025 election and the participation from the Gen Z and the young millennials. I put out a statement on this election. Here's what I said. I'm going to read it in full. The right has lost and is losing the college graduates, the should-be upcoming business owners and white-collar workers, young millennials, and Gen Z who should all have families now. They lost them in this election, and they're going to continue losing them in the future elections. Now, I'm not speaking about your blue-haired freaks. I'm not speaking about the crazies that we all know and we've all seen. There's plenty of them. I'm Gen Z. I know plenty of them myself. I'm talking about the ordinary ones. The ones that desired and were promised an ordinary, successful life through traditional means. And I promise you, there's plenty of these people. It's actually kind of trendy right now amongst young people. They lost these people because the economy and society left them behind. And I need you to understand that. Society and the economy both left Gen Z and young millennials behind. They were bushwhacked in college and high school. They were corrupted in early education. Their families did not deliver. The economy crushed them. And means that used to provide success, family, and happiness no longer do. And this is something, I'm going to provide a note here. This is something that's so important to understand. They were bushwhacked in college and high school, firstly. And secondly, means that used to provide success, family, and happiness no longer do. Continuing. They were crushed by the route that took them to this dead end. The bigger problem is that the right, generally speaking, does not care. They don't care about the Gen Z, and they don't care about the millennials. Now, I'm sure there's plenty of you that'll hear this that will say, that's not true, that's not true. And maybe you do. Maybe you do care about these people, but plenty of them don't. And it's evidenced in the fact that they literally say they don't care. And if that's not evidence enough, it's evidenced in the fact that they're not doing anything to win these people over. They laugh at them, they poke fun at them, and they troll them online. They give advice that worked 40, 20, and sometimes even just 7 years ago. But that advice does not work now. Worse, many of them accuse the young generations of nothing more than mere stupidity. But these young generations are voters. Your Gen Z, the majority of Gen Z now is all voting. Your millennials are all voting. They are the future of political America. They're the future of the church. They're the future of Christianity. They're the future business owners. They're the future entrepreneurs. As the boomers die off, the Gen Z and the young millennials are taking effect, and they're going to take hold over every arena of American civilization. And the right is losing their vote because they are not giving them any attention. They're not addressing their concerns. They're not addressing their desires. They're not giving them any attention on the political stage. And the right is losing their vote, evidenced in every single election now. The left is noticing this, though, because the left loses on almost every issue. The left has lost almost every single generation, except they do seem to have some sort of stronghold over some of the old boomers. And opportunistically, they are taking advantage of it. The more intelligent ones are. This is how Zohran Mamdani, the new mayor of New York City, won their vote. He appealed to their needs. The right must take notice of this before it is too late. And that was my statement. Now, this statement got quite a bit of flack. Man, I'm not really that surprised of that, because it strikes people where it hurts. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to be real here. I'm Gen Z. I'm on the younger end of both of these young people here. And I don't support everything that my generation supports, and nor do I support a lot of what the millennials support. I think a lot of what they want is ridiculous. But here's what you have to understand. Something got them to that point. You know, back in the mid-20th century, you had the hippies. Now you have this, but something led to the hippies being hippies. And the smart people realized that, and they realized if we're going to make any connection with these people who have a very strong hold on culture, we have to figure out what got them here. And when you're looking at Gen Z, I don't think we're in this position because of stupidity. That's very irrational. There's multiple things that brought them to the point they're at. One of those, and again, I'm speaking to the more rationally minded ones, and there's plenty of rationally minded young millennials and Gen Z. They're not all blue-haired freaks, supporting Pakistan and burning the American flag in the streets. That's not the case at all. Matter of fact, there's actually a strong number of very far-right conservatives in Gen Z. There have been plenty of people that have said Gen Z might end up being one of the most conservative generations this country has seen. But I don't think we're there yet because of the means that got us to this point. Because again, a lot of these people, as I said, are the people who should be family people, successful in business. They should be coming out of college, with their feet on fire. They should be getting a lot done. Everything should lead to this. These are the kind of people, I think, that are trying to do something. And those are the people that have shifted left. Not because they think the left is going to be the better future for America, but it's the only side that said, hey, we are going to listen to what you're saying. Now, is the left actually going to do that? No. But they lie. And when you're desperate, you listen to lies. That's how Germany ended up in the position they were in going into World War II under Nazi Germany. They were desperate. They were hopeless. You had the Nazi party come in. They said, look, we know what position you're in. We're with you. We're struggling too. We're going to help you. Thus, Nazi Germany. It's a very similar situation. Now, let me explain some of this. There's three main things that I think we need to look at. One is parenting. Two is a combination of economy and culture and politics. And the third is re-education, manipulation, and we don't have a failed education system. We have a corrupted and manipulated education system designed to re-educate the people. It's an indoctrination system. So you have parenting, culture/economy, and then indoctrination. The first of those that we can look at is parenting. The parents obviously failed their kids. Whether you're looking at Gen X who wasn't home, or if you're looking at boomers who indoctrinated their kids with strange ideology and politics, and I don't mean offense, there's a lot of boomers who are very solid, but there's enough of them that indoctrinated the people with these concepts that just aren't applicable now, post 9/11, post-COVID especially. The second of those is the economy and the political arena. Like I said, Gen Z is very politicized, and we're also very polarized. It's one extreme or it's the other extreme in politics and in beliefs. And this can be good and this can be bad. But the economy is completely failed. The Gen Z has no hope of starting a family. They have very little hope of being able to afford to get married and to have children, not to mention the fact that culture says you shouldn't even get married and have children, so there's an internal conflict. They can't afford to buy a house because the cost of living is the highest it's ever been. It costs around $400,000 in my area to buy a house. They don't want to be in debt their entire life because they've seen what that did to, again, their parents and their grandparents and those that they're around. But they're screwed. They don't have any options. These are the same people that were told they had to go to college to be successful. So they went to college. And now they're $88,000 in debt. But now the same people who said, oh, you have to go to college to be successful. If you do not go to college, you are going to fail in life. You have to have a degree like every other person. Well, now that they did that, those same people are saying, oh, well, college sucks. It indoctrinates you and it puts you in debt. You should have gotten a trade. Okay. For those coming up the line, for the youngest of the Gen Z and for the Gen Alpha, and then the Gen Beta, sure, tell them to get a trade. That's awesome. That's great. Trades are very important. They cost a lot less, but also there's trade school. Trade school's expensive too. But it does cost a lot less. It pays a lot of money. This is true. And for those people, that'll be great. But for all the people that were already told they had to go to college, went to college, and got in so much debt, now what? What for them? They're not being addressed. They're just told they were stupid. Well, fantastic. But things have consequences, and they're paying for those consequences that have been totally manipulated against them and weaponized against them, and now they're stuck. And nobody seems to care. So you have that, and then you have indoctrination, and the schools did indoctrinate these people. And again, their parents sent them off to these schools. They said the schools are necessary, but now they're stuck. And for those who are recognizing the indoctrination, they're having some sort of nihilistic realization. Because now they've pendulum swung, and now they don't think they can trust anything, and everything's a lie. And that's why you see a lot of this weird pendulum swing with the Gen Z. Because they're approaching everything by realizing the schools lied to them, the politicians lied to them, the celebrities lied to them, in some cases their families lied to them, their elders lied to them, and even if it wasn't deliberately lying, perhaps it was just ignorance, but that ignorance misled them. And they see that it either got them personally in the situation they're in, or got their generation in the situation they're in, and now they don't trust anything. So everything is really not true until it can be proven that it is. That's why you're seeing some sort of crazy ideologies within Gen Z, and it's becoming rampant because they've had a nihilistic response to these circumstances. So there's all of this. Now I'm going to read a reply that I got, or parts of a reply that I got to this. And it's an interesting, it presents interesting questions. So the first question is, what exactly is Zohran Mamdani offering that appeals to this generation? Secondly, what is it that this generation wants? Thirdly, what are their needs? Fourthly, should we change to a socialist society in order to keep our young voters? Fifthly, is this the best solution? And sixthly, what are specific ways that the quote-unquote right can change their stance in order to appeal to the young voters? So I think it's important that we address two parts of this. So firstly, if we look at the voters for Zohran Mamdani, for Sliwa, Adams, and Como, it'll reveal a lot about the Gen Z votes. So I'll put that up for you to see. Okay, so 75% of the 18 through 29-year-olds voted for Mamdani. 19% voted for Como. I think this is important to understand. Now, if we switch over to this other screen here, the CNN exit poll shows that 70% of the 18 to 29-year-olds voted for Spanberger in Virginia, 69% voted for Sherrill in New Jersey, and in New York, 78% of the youngest voters voted for Mamdani. 79% of the 18 to 29-year-olds supported Proposition 50 over in California. So there was a poll that was released, and it was discussed on the Glenn Beck show. And basically, and I'm not going to cite all of the poll to you, but basically what that poll showed is that 7 out of 10 Gen Z, and there's a lot of points to this poll, so I'm basically averaging everything out. And on average, basically 7 out of 10 of Gen Z want socialism in America. Now, we could take this to a bit more of an extreme. Some of the more extreme side that hate America, they basically want like a fascist system that takes everything from the more successful and gives it to them. So I don't want to exactly say that 7 out of 10 Gen Z hate America and want socialism/fascism, but basically 7 out of 10 of Gen Z and younger millennials want a socialistic system to take over America. Now here's the reality. Some people just chalk this up to laziness. Gen Z is lazy. And in some cases, and I shouldn't speak just as Gen Z because this is also the millennials too, in some cases, this is true. It is just laziness. There's not the work ethic there used to be. Are you surprised? Does this surprise you? Because it's the boomers and the Gen X who created two things. One, they created a workaholic environment that was not very great for the growing up of the children, for the raising of the children. So this is one thing. Children were raised by the school system, so you created this product. It shouldn't be that surprising. But two, they also created all the technology, all the cell phones, the computers, the TV, the entertainment, and the AI. All of these things are the things they credit to Gen Z and millennials being less productive and being what we might consider lazy. But they created these products, and they got the result they should have seen coming. And a lot of Gen Z who does want to work are looking at the AI revolution and they're saying, we can get a job in A, B, and C. But there's a good chance that just a few years down the line, these jobs are going to become either obsolete or much closer to obsolete. There's plenty of jobs that are already being lost to AI and to robotics and to the advancement of technology. Nobody wants to end up setting their life on a career that's going to be overtaken by technology and AI. You just can't do that. That's going to destroy your life. It's way too risky to do that. So you have that. But yes, 7 out of 10 of the younger people want the socialism. Now, also ironically, a lot of those people also support President Trump. So what is this saying? I think this shows one thing. Actually, it shows 3 things. 1, it shows that perhaps this isn't just about work ethic. 2, it shows they're not far left liberals by and large. Now, maybe a large percentage of them is, but they're not all these far left hippies. And then 3, it shows it's an economic focus. They have a fear for the economy and their future. So I thought of this analogy. So if you have the 7 out of 10 and the 3 out of 10, you're driving down this interstate that we consider life. And they're seeing all of these different things in the environment as they pass by. You know, you can't afford housing, you can't afford a family, you're struggling to start a business, all of these different things. Because if anything, it's the young people that know how to start businesses, because that's what they've done for the last 15 years online. It's been more online businesses than we've ever seen. They know how to do this, but they're not able to get off the ground. The algorithm doesn't support them, the government weaponizes against them, taxes are through the roof, so they're seeing all of these different things. The high taxes, the high interest, can't afford a family. The cost of living is astronomical. So you have to exit the interstate at one point. And what they've always been told is that we live in a free market society. It is a capitalistic society where if you work hard, you are successful. And that's what all the older people always taught them. And in origin, that would be true. But in reality and in modernity, it's not really the case. So these people who believe that, they got off on the socialism exit. They say, if this is capitalism, we don't want it, because it isn't working for us. Maybe it worked 40 years ago, but it doesn't work now. And if the cost to have a family and to survive a semi-half-decent life is socialism, then we're going to pay that cost. Now, is this a proper conclusion? No. Do I agree with this conclusion? No, and I'm going to get to that. But here's the thing the right has to understand. This is the conclusion they came to. And if you don't understand that in politics, if you're not willing to understand their perspective, you aren't going to win their vote. And in 20 years, when these are the main voting people and these are the people running for office, these are the things they're going to believe because you never did anything about it. This is what they believe, and if you refuse to understand it, you're not going to get anywhere. Now, the other 30%, they're going down this interstate, and I think they're the ones who realized a closer version of reality. They recognized, no, this isn't capitalism that we're experiencing. That's gone. The government ridded itself of that, and now we have corporatism / socialism, governmentized, nationalized socialism. Nationalized socialism, that's called Nazism and fascism. We have fascism, and we have corporatism. And it's been weaponized against the people. So in recognizing this, they said, no, we don't want to get off on the exit of socialism. That's just going to advance what we already have. That's going to take it from the top and push it even further down. We need to get off on free market capitalism with an injection of godlyism. Now, the difference between the Gen Z and those in the founding era who recognize this is the realization, or rather the lack of realization, that God needs to be the center of this. So there is a small problem that's going to grow into a much larger problem. And I think you can see that with some of the far right in the Gen Z and in the young millennials. It becomes much more nihilistic. But either way, they're the ones who recognize that what we have isn't capitalism, and what we need to get back to is capitalism. So, going back to address some more of these questions here. What exactly is Zohran Mamdani offering that appeals to this generation or these generations? I'm not sure that he's actually offering anything. He's not actually going to fix any of the problems. He's a socialist. So if it is socialism that you want, he will provide that. But it's not going to have the ends that they anticipate. But he is doing one thing that the right hasn't done. And that's appealing to the needs of those certain people. He's kind of a populist. He's like a far-left populist. And he's listening to their needs. He said, look, I hear you. And we're going to do something about it. We're going to do what you want. Now, that's not exactly a good thing. It's not going to have a good end. But he is at least listening or appearing to listen. That's more than what a lot of the people on the right are doing. What is it that this generation wants? I can't speak for the whole generation, but when we're speaking about the rationally minded ones, I think they want to have a half-decent career. They want to be successful and do something. They want to get somewhere. They want to make a name for themselves, just like most other generations. They want a better life than we've experienced for the last 5 years, because if anything, the last 5 years, especially 2021 to the beginning of 2025, have been terrible. They've been absolutely terrible. We saw militarism, we saw government takeover, countless lockdowns, we saw the economy fall apart, threat of World War III at every corner. Nobody wants to live that life. That is the life that they lived at the end of the Great Depression. Nobody wants to experience that. Nobody wants that for their kids or their future kids. They want to have a family. They want to have stability. They don't want to spend the first 30 years of their life in a crappy apartment in the middle of a bad town eating bad mac and cheese that they know is going to destroy their health, because that's come forward. And they're going to have, maybe if they can get married, they're going to have a wife that's struggling and hates her life, and then they have a kid that they can't afford, so instead of raising him well, now they're sending him off to an indoctrination school. That's the problem, and they don't want that, but they know that's what they're going to have. They're going to have countless debt that they can't pay off. They're not going to live a half-decent life. So they pendulum swing. I think in what they say they want, they're pendulum swinging. And they want a vacation in their early 20s, and they want to do all these things that usually you do post-retirement. I think they're wanting to do it now because they see they're never going to actually be able to do it. They're never going to get to that point. And truthfully, I believe that they're never going to get there. What are their needs? Their needs is just to have some form of stability. And the stability that the boomers and the Gen X and some of the millennials had isn't actual stability. Having a job where you never see your families and you're not really getting anywhere because you're not working up the ladder anymore. You're still racking up debt, whether you have student loan or you don't have student loan. None of that's getting you anywhere. They just want to have real stability. They want to have a real half-decent life. If they got a white-collar job, they want to know that they actually are going to be successful in that white-collar job if they put the work into it. They want to know that if they're a lawyer, that's going to get them somewhere, because that's what they were always promised. And that's what their grandparents had. You see that in the 50s, and you see it in the 60s. That was the way life worked. If you put in the work, you got the results. Now if you put in the work, your results are staying alive? Maybe? Should we change to a socialist society in order to keep our young voters? Well, no, because now we're just the left. Well, we already are the left, really. Most of the Republicans are actually left. But now we're no different than the Democrats. If we just change to a socialist agenda, then we're no different than our opposition. So no, that's not a solution. The solution is going to be able to win them back over. The solution is to convince them of what is reality and to offer them solutions to their needs, desires, and wants, and to reveal to them the reality of the situation. So no, that's not a solution. That's never going to be a solution. And those who offer that as a solution need to be basically excommunicated from the movement. So no, it is, to question 5, is that the best solution? No, absolutely not. 6, what are specific ways that the right can change their stance in order to appeal to the young voters? I don't think it's about being hip. I think some people think we gotta be hip and cool, and we gotta kind of appeal to the young people and be on our TikToks doing dancing and all these things. You saw that some of the Democrats did that. And they try to be hip and cool, and they get on the social media, and they do all these things. Well, to some extent, maybe that is beneficial. Because if you're gonna make your campaign an old traditional means, you're gonna go on CNN, and you're gonna have a write-up in the New York Times, and you're gonna be featured in the newsletters. That's not gonna win you the young people, because they're not gonna see you, because they don't follow those platforms. Legacy media is dying in every single format. Even the magazines now are falling apart. The newspapers are not nearly as popular as they used to be, and your pundit outlets like Fox and CNN, those have completely fallen apart. So no, that doesn't really work. But being hip and cool and, kind of coming up with the hip characters, and that's not going to get you anywhere. Because what was popular in 2020, and we saw that in 2020, we saw it kind of in 2024, you definitely saw it in 2016, with the celebrities and all that, it doesn't work anymore. Because now we're at a point where we're so whittled down in desperation that doesn't matter anymore. That's just noise. And even the celebrities now, like Jennifer Lawrence, have admitted that those methods just don't work. Okay, so that's not it. I think to appeal to the young voters, you need to appeal to their needs and to their desires, in that order. Needs first, desires second. And if their needs and their desires kind of line up, they want stability. They don't want to be racked up in debt. They want to have a half-decent job that kind of fits what they want to do, and it's actually productive to society. I think there's a lot of people that are tired of having jobs, working for a company that supports things they don't believe in, that does nothing but fatten society, filling them with chemicals and poison that's destroying them. I think people are tired of that. That was the old method that lasted for a little short while in the 20th century. I don't think it works anymore. So I think you need to be able to find a way to fix the economy and to fix society. But the other thing is, you have to stop discrediting them. Just because you're 70, or because you're 50, or because you're 90, and things worked once upon a time, you have to recognize that the situation has changed. It's a new game. We're playing a new game now. On the local, on the national, and on the international front, everything is different than it used to be. Politics that worked in the 1860s wouldn't work in the 1950s. Just like politics that worked in the 1950s don't work in the 2020s, because the situation and the times are different. And the effective politicians understand this. They understand that we approach modernity through introspection of the past, but you have to change things for what's presently going on. Politics is always changing. Politics is nuance, because by definition, everything in politics changes based on the situation. So that's very important to understand. But you have to stop discrediting the young people. The people that I support, people like Dave Ramsey, an intelligent guy when it comes to finance, but he completely discredits the millennials and the Gen Z as just being lazy. Do you think they're going to listen to you if you refuse to listen to them? Do you think that they're going to listen to you and that they're going to vote for you if you lambaste them every time you speak of them? Of course not. You have to recognize that some of these people have significance, they have importance, they have intelligence. And as is the topic of the book that I'm working on, it needs to go back to a younger age. It needs to start at 12. 12 years old is what I say. Starting at 12 years old, you need to recognize these young people, and you need to start bringing them up so that by the time that they're a legal adult in the United States, which would be 18, by that time, they have the ability to be a highly successful and intelligent human being. This means that you can have a conversation with a 14-year-old that's actually very intelligent. That's what this means. And if you don't believe that this is realistic, study John Quincy Adams. That is your homework. Study John Quincy Adams. And if we had a society that did that, I think you would have a better situation. So there's one of the main things, is you have to actually listen to these people. Now, I'm not saying that everything they say is correct. A lot of what they want is ridiculous. A lot of what they want is stupid. I mean, socialism is just stupid. History proves that it doesn't work, and if anything, it's always going to be weaponized against the people. But look at what got them there. And you need to, once you trace what got them there, you can start to fix the problem. And when you look at the last 25 years, you can see why they've come to this conclusion, why this is what they want, and you can figure out a way to fix it. Now, I'm not an economist, I'm not technically a politician, and I don't work in the government. My job is to vote in people who are going to do these things. My job is to front candidates and back candidates and get candidates elected who actually care about these issues and fix these problems, as is the job of every other American citizen. But if you don't look at these things, you're never going to win their vote. And here's the big thing. For the older generations, for the right, if you want to win these future elections, you have to listen to these people because they're the people voting. As you can see, it's on the screen right now. 75% of 18 to 29 voted for Mamdani. Only 34% of 65 and older voted for Mamdani. 45 to 64, 41% voted for Mamdani. There are factors that play into that too that has to do with the high costs in New York City. There's other factors that play in that for New York City more specifically. But the point is, if your candidate isn't giving any sort of attention to your desires, you're not going to vote for them. If you had a 25-year-old running for governor, very intelligent, astute person, you could say that this 25-year-old, he's got the political world kind of figured out, and he's doing very well. And there have been candidates like that in the past. But he has the full support of the Millennials and the Gen Z. He's conservative and everything, but he doesn't give two hoots to the wind about the Boomers. The Boomers aren't going to vote for him because they's just a young chap, blah, 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 blah. He doesn't understand us. And, well, that's the same way it feels in reverse. Because a lot of politics is more about feelings than it is about facts. Because if you feel like your situation is crushing you, whether or not your grandparents were crushed by their situation, you're going to respond accordingly. Now, there was one other comment that I wanted to somewhat address on this comment that I put out. And it has more to do with parenting and education. So you can't complain about how bad the education system is and then keep sending your kids and expecting something different. Schools and colleges must be purged of the world curriculum first. This is true. But who is this on? Is it on the Gen Z or is it on their parents? It's on their parents originally. Now, Gen Z and the Millennials, they might have been doppelgangered into believing that, they were hoodwinked into believing that the schools and the colleges are actually beneficial, so they continue sending their kids there. And even if they don't believe that, they can't really afford to homeschool their kids anyway. They don't have either the time or the money to do that because it's not like it's exactly cheap or easy. In most states, they don't really make it the easiest to do homeschooling. So this falls back on the older generations anyway. Now, I agree that the indoctrination was one of the worst things that ever happened and has been super successful. Even on the right who has figured it out, it's still corrupting their minds because, like I said, they're having this nihilistic response where nothing is real anymore. It's like a Matrix response where nothing they see is real. And that's because of the indoctrination system. And then the trade response was the second part of this. Trades are booming. Ask any tradesman how much money they make compared to a recent graduate in college. Well, this is true, but again, a lot of these people, so if you look at this, 18 to 29, your 18-year-olds might be going into college. Your 19, 20, 21, 22, maybe 23 and 24-year-olds might be in college. But after that, you start getting up in the 27, 29, you get up into 30, 35. These people are probably out of college by now. These people aren't voting due to trades or whatever. They already have the consequences of the college because all of society said they had to go to college. Their parents pushed them to go to college. They may have been indoctrinated. They may not have been indoctrinated. A lot of them didn't necessarily want to be indoctrinated. You know, a lot of people that go to college, how many of them were completely destroyed by the system? Some of them, yes. All of them, of course not. Of course it's not all of them. A lot of them are just crushed by the debt. They wanted to get the white-collar job, or whatever the case may be, at the other end. Not only did they not really get what they went to college for, they have the debt regardless. There's no refund here. People still compare to the 20, 30, 4-year-olds ago because people keep sending their kids to the same life path, college, which, as mentioned, has been hijacked or corrupted. Yes, this is true. This doesn't change the situation, though. This doesn't change the politics. This doesn't change how they're voting because it doesn't fix the problem. And the real truth is that if you're a parent and your kids don't know all you do, it is your job as the parents to teach them that. And if you don't, you as the parent are most likely the failure. Well, true. This is still true. But what are we doing to fix it? We're not doing anything to fix it, so it doesn't change anything. It doesn't make a difference. If we're not going to try and fix the problem on the political right, whether you are 18, whether you're 12, whether you're 25, 35, 55, or 95, if you're not going to do anything to address the problem, recognize the problem, and fix the problem, it doesn't make a difference. You don't have to tell a 25-year-old that their $88,000 in debt is going to ruin their life. You don't have to tell them that. They most likely have already realized that at some point. Their problem is they're the ones that have it, and they don't know what to do about it, and the economy is still failing them, and they don't have a solution. Now, I'm not saying that we need to abandon the right and go to the left. The left is even worse. The left is the one who created this indoctrination system. The problem is, us on the political right, who are, whether we're young or old, we have to find a way to fix the problem and to reach the younger people on the other side. And if we don't do this, we're going to lose the future elections. We're going to lose our civilization. And then we're going to lose our country. Because that is the consequence of this. Ideas have consequences. Realities have consequences. Everything has consequences. Whether they're good or bad consequences. And this is the reality of the situation. And I think, more than the Israel question, more than other topics that get brought up mundanely inside of politics and thought groups, there's two main problems. One is the New World Order, which is pushing this. They're upstream of this. And the second is going to be your young people's vote. Both of those are major issues. And if we don't address these and start solving these, we're dead. That's all there is to say to it. So I challenge you, find something. Find some way to start solving this because we have, I would say, a year until midterms. And if we lose the midterms, it's game over. This is Daniel C. Green at Eagle Eye. Thank you.